I have an update to share with everybody. And with this update, you will be able to confront the elephant in the room and ask tough questions. Get ready to challenge everything you thought you knew about the biggest chess scandal between Hans Niemann and Magnus Carlsen, because the truth you know is far more complex than you think. There seemed to be a conclusion 2 years ago that would tell if Hans is actually a fraud or not. And even Hikaru voiced it in one of his interviews he gave later.
I think that
it did not take long before one piece of information different from everything that had been found before was discovered. It was because of this piece of information everyone got it wrong. Let us start by looking at the game that occurred at the Sinfield Cup. A review on Stockfish shows many chess fans were more willing to accept the notion that 2 + 2 = 5 than acknowledging that Hans Niemann defeated Magnus Carlsen without cheating. This was what Fishy had to say about the game.
I saw Carlsen Niemann and I thought, wow.
Before we go further into this video, let's make this interesting with the Hans Niemann personality test. This is an attempt to show you what your opinion about Hans says about your personality.
I am 100% sure that you know on the 22nd of September 2022, the greatest chess upset in history happened. Magnus Carlsen, the best chess player in the world, made a move he had never made before. Not one of those jaw-dropping engine moves he finds during a seemingly equal endgame just to squeeze water out of stone, nor all of his gimmick opening lines he uses to disrespect his opponent. This move was not even over the board. It was him withdrawing from a tournament after losing brutally to a young American grandmaster, Hans Niemann, at the Sinfield Cup. The win was like a tortoise defeating a hare, which surprised everybody in the chess world. In their next matchup, an online tournament, Magnus Carlsen made a similar move. The world champion resigned just after 2 moves. As if these upsets were not enough to unsettle the water of the chess world, after that defeat, Magnus Carlsen made another head-turning move, accusing Hans Niemann of cheating, claiming he had evidence of Hans Niemann's wrongdoing, but he wouldn't share it publicly. These turn of events sparked heated debates across the chess world, and since then, time has moved forward and backwards for chess fans, with not one moment for us to breathe, and truth and untruth have been in an endless, bloody combat. Although this scandal started 2 years ago, the deep separation it has caused between the chess world and chess fans altogether till today is still as clear as crystal. Guess what? The truth you know is far more complex than you think. It might have been misrepresented and distorted. So this video, we are going to first review the backstory, and I'm going to be giving you everything you probably missed about the cheating scandal. Then we do a deep analysis into all of the accusations during the allegation. The chapter after that looks at how we got it all wrong 2 years ago. When that is completed, we're going to do evidence review of everything that was put forward against Hans Niemann. And last but not the least, and which is definitely the most important, the update I'm about to share about the scandal that will completely change your perspective and blow your mind about everything, all the opinion you have about the Hans Niemann Magnus Carlsen's scandal. It all started at the FTX Crypto Cup when Hans Niemann, the lowest rated player in the tournament, defeated the best chess player on the planet with the black pieces. When it happened, not much meaning was attributed to it because, as expected, Hans Niemann ended the tournament lowest on the chart and Magnus Carlsen won the tournament. The next time the two would meet, it was at the Sinfield Cup. Hans was a bit fortunate because he was a last-minute replacement for Richard Rapport, the player that dropped out and that was meant to play the tournament. After a draw and a win in his first 2 rounds, Hans Niemann would face Magnus Carlsen. In that face-off, Carlsen stared at the board, shifting his chin and forehead between his palms as though his brain had grown too heavy for his neck, and watched as Hans Niemann break him. After that match, Magnus dropped a cryptic tweet on X, leaving the chess world in the dark. He made no comments just to make a statement, but this only allowed wild theories to flourish. The first one was that someone from Magnus Carlsen's camp informed Hans Niemann's the repertoire he prepared for the match, and Magnus felt betrayed because of this, which made him resign. Others believed he resigned because he thought Hans Niemann cheated during the game, and that was the reason he won, while a few sat on the fence to watch the drama unfold. On the 19th of September 2020, the two players would face off again. This was a match many tipped would be a perfect for a Magnus Carlsen revenge. Well, there was no revenge because Magnus Carlsen lost again, resigning after just a move. After that game, he dropped a bombshell statement which encapsulates how he feels Hans cheated during their game at the Field Cup, particularly because he was not thinking at critical times during the game. And additionally, he was critical about Hans' unusual over-the-board development and many more games he had played online recently. Are these allegations really true? Well, let's take further look into it.
Before we go further into this video, let's make this interesting with the Hans Niemann personality test. This is an attempt to show you what your opinion about Hans says about your personality. The rule is simple. Pick one of the 4 words you think best describes Hans Niemann. Each word or phrase has a statement tied to it that attempts to describe the chooser. By now, you should have locked in your answer. So let's start with talented. If talented was your choice, this is who you are. You are an altruistic person. You see the best in people and situations. Also, you tend to be open-minded more often than not. The statement for others will be reviewed later in the video. But there's a side note. If you chose cheater, you can stop watching this video now because I wouldn't say more than that. Just stop because it's brutal.
Let us start by looking at the game that occurred at the Field Cup. A review on Stockfish shows Hans did not play exceptionally well, as many people claimed. Hans had some errors as well as Magnus Carlsen. In fact, what actually happened was that Magnus Carlsen mixed up his opening lines and Hans was able to capitalize. If I am too bad a chess player to have an opinion on whether a game is good enough to be that of an engine, this was what Vichy had to say about the game.
I saw Carlsen Niemann and I thought, wow, it's a great game by this kid. You know, when you play Carlsen, you're desperate to get it over with. Many people have this problem that they want to get it over with. They can't handle the tension of playing him for a couple of hours. So even if they have a better position, they use that as a springboard to liquidate into a drawn thing and they take the draw. But Niemann kept conserving his advantage even though he still had to work hard, and he converted very well. And I thought Carlsen literally cracked at the end.
A statement that corroborates Vichy's statements was also made by a former world chess champion, Karpov. While their statements were undoubtedly logical, they were not mainstream. Comments from chess players like Hikaru and other active players appealed to a lot of people who were on the side of Magnus Carlsen. Hikaru, who was a domineering force of the movement that Hans cheated, took it a step further. He did not only react to the game, but he also reviewed the post-game analysis of the match Hans Niemann played against Magnus, and even the ones after. Doing this, he expressed his dissatisfaction with Hans' level of analysis, emphasizing how it was below the elo he played during the game. As if that was not enough, he commented on his accent and even body language during the analysis. This mobilized a lot of people who were head-bent on convicting Hans of cheating to also start scrutinizing his post-game interviews and analysis. During their search, something that seemed incriminating was discovered. In one of Hans' post-game interview, the one he gave after the match against Magnus, he stated that he was only lucky and fortunate to have studied the line Magnus Carlsen played against him, because Magnus had actually played the same opening against Wesley So in a London tournament some years back. This particular game was looked up by chess fans who were on Magnus Carlsen's side, and not only was the game not found, it was also discovered that Magnus did not even participate in the competition. Well, all hell starts to break loose due to this. The new development rose a very important question, which is, does this mean Hans has been lying the whole time? Well, the answer to that is no, because further checks actually show Magnus played the same opening against Wesley So in 2019 Tata Steel tournament. As all of these were ongoing, the reputation of Hans Niemann began to drop down the drain. Although there was no concrete evidence to pin him down as a cheater, but what he had done, which is defeating Magnus with the black pieces, was so unbelievable an act, many chess fans were more willing to accept the notion that 2 plus 2 equals to 5 than acknowledging that Hans Niemann defeated Magnus Carlsen without cheating. While all of these controversies and confusion were going on, it did not take long before one piece of information different from everything that had been found before was discovered. This piece of information took the whole case to another level, and it actually turned everything around against Hans Niemann. It was because of this piece of information everyone got it wrong. The suspicion that Hans Niemann actually cheated rose to another level. He could not even defend himself. What exactly was this piece of information? We'll find out.
Before we find out, let us find out what choosing cloud chaser says about you. If you think Hans is a cloud chaser, you are simply a stereotyper. You tend to oversimplify complex issues by focusing on a single aspect. You make a lot of generalizations about a group of people, ignoring individual differences.
Before we go into this, we need to make it clear so we do not get things mixed up like we did 2 years ago. The reason this whole scandal started was a game during the Sinkfield Cup. Then it spiraled into something completely different. And it is because of this info which the public got to know. We should not make the mistake we made previously. Before this whole scandal happened, unknown to a lot of people, Hans Niemann had been caught cheating by chess.com and his account banned for 6 months. Although chess.com withheld this information from the public, titled players on the platform knew about it. Apparently, after signing an NDA with chess.com, the titled players could access the list of all the titled players that had been caught cheating on the platform. Players like Magnus, Hikaru, and other players knew. In fact, it wouldn't be wrong to postulate that Magnus's accusation was fueled by Hans' dark history on chess.com that he was aware of, rather than the game they actually play. The same can be said of the likes of Hikaru and other top players who raised suspicion and did not evaluate the scandal and the game objectively. So, since they could not really pinpoint any concrete evidence that Hans Niemann cheated over the board against Magnus Carlsen, the narrative that he cheated in the past was overblown, as if to say, if we cannot prove he cheated, well, we have proof he cheated in the past, making the possibility of him cheating against Magnus over the board very likely. Rather than confronting the big question of how Hans possibly cheated against Magnus over the board in an ultra-elite tournament where players usually pass through metal detectors and other scans, and to top that, many competitions enforce a 15-minute delay on broadcasting to the public to prevent players outside from suggesting moves to the players playing in real time. Or on the other hand, they could not also question Magnus Carlsen's claim of cheating accusation altogether. People got stuck on the narrative that Hans cheated in the past, so he probably cheated against Magnus because that was the most comfortable narrative for their bias. I totally understand it is hard to point fingers at Magnus Carlsen because he is the best player in the world, but the evidence brought forward to back his claim were very, very, very lame. If you disagree, well, let's review them in the next chapter and come to a conclusion.
Back again. If you chose polarizing, it means you pay attention to details and recognize that people and things in general can be positive or negative. You are a realistic person and access situations without illusions. If you chose cheater,
the first evidence, if we can call it that, we are going to look at is Magnus Carlsen's statement. According to him, Hans Niemann was not thinking in critical position, which is why he thinks he was cheating. To be honest, this does not equate to cheating. In fact, there is actually a viral video of Magnus Carlsen playing, I think, Garry Kasparov when he was barely 18, and it was strolling around while that game was going on. saying Hans Niemann was not thinking during critical position does not hold water and should be flushed down the drain. Another quote-unquote evidence that went viral was Hans Niemann's body language and accent during his post-game analysis. To be honest, to insinuate Hans Niemann cheated because of his body language and accent during analysis, in my own books, does not hold water. Even though watching that video, it felt a little bit bizarre. That analysis Hans gave was not like other post-game analysis other chess players give. I know some people have argued or could argue that that's a style, but I would not go into that. Regardless, if you think Hans Niemann cheated solely because of his body language and the analysis were not convincing, the real question you should be asking yourself is, how exactly was he able to cheat over the board? If you can't provide any answer to it to back your claim, then you should probably hold your peace. Another evidence is the beads. The controversy centered around Hans' use of vibrating anal beads to receive signals from chess engine. To be honest, we need to find the person that started this conversation to give them an award because it brought more popularity to chess and the case in general. But as for it being credible and concrete enough to call Hans a cheater for his game against Magnus, we will be stretching reasoning to accommodate that narrative. So chess.com also contributed to this wave of accusation by publishing a 73-page document which corroborated Magnus' statement that Hans had likely cheated in more than 100 online chess games. We need to first understand the fact that this does not in any way address Hans Niemann cheating over the board against Magnus Carlsen in that particular tournament. This document was actually well received at first, but later on, holes began to appear in chess.com's allegation. Kenneth Regan, the leading authority on identifying chess cheaters who was cited in chess.com's report, later said he sees little or nothing to suggest Hans played dishonestly in 45 of the games in question, and that further 23 games are only debatable.
All right, what's he being accused of now by Magnus Carlsen?
He's being accused of cheating over the board in their game in St. Louis, and more recently than he has confessed were Magnus's words. And of that, I have no evidence. There's a fanciful accusation that was raised by Elon Musk, among others, but there's no evidence for it at all. The people who were on site checked the players with scanners. They were under observation. And as they have, that plus my statistical reports during the tournament showed no evidence of any cheating.
Apart from Kenneth Regan's statement, in December, FIDE, the top governing body in chess, concluded an investigation into the controversy and found nothing suspicious in Hans Niemann's play at any live tournament over the previous 3 years. FIDE also found Carlsen guilty of withdrawing from the Sinquefield Cup without valid reason and fined him 10,000 euros. At this juncture of the scandal, it became so evident that the evidence put forward by Magnus Carlsen and all other individuals accusing Hans Niemann of cheating were not concrete enough to conclude Hans cheated. But for a lot of people who sat on the fence, there seemed to be a conclusion 2 years ago that would tell if Hans is actually a fraud or not. And even Hikaru voiced it in one of his interviews he gave later.
I think that right now I'm very undecided, but I do feel that within the next 3 to 6 months, assuming Hans is able to play over the board in more tournaments, the stats will make it very clear one way or the other based on his results whether it's legitimate or not.
Now, it is 2 years since Hikaru made this statement. We have all the details now, and it is imperative to check if Hans' level of chess has dropped because he is unable to cheat again, or if it is otherwise. In a chess tournament, any security can be bypassed in theory, but cheating consistently over a period of time without getting caught would definitely require an advanced level of skill, which is very unlikely. Although Hans has been accused of the latter, the only advanced level of skill we have seen from him since the cheating scandal has been over the board. Immediately after the scandal and after he was reinstated to chess.com, He became an outcast and even struggled, even till now, to get invitations to tournaments. The ones he played in, he had to get into them. At first, he struggled and even lost to lower rated players and international masters. So at this point, people thought he was a fraud, obviously, thinking he only got the title of a GM because he cheated his way up. But as time went on, he later picked up his form. So in November, Niemann delivered a near-perfect performance to win the Tournament of Peace in Zagreb. Apart from that, Niemann also won Chess.com's weekly tournament twice, which at a point briefly put him at number 2 on its global blitz ranking, just above Magnus Carlsen. As seen all of this were not enough, Niemann also won the $50,000 match that was held in the Nitex Sports Stadium against Vidit Gorati, an Indian prodigy who participated in the candidates tournament. In addition to this, during the 2023 WRB Championship, Hans also defeated another Indian prodigy, Pragnanda, a very bright player who has also taken down Magnus Carlsen in classical chess. Hans has also managed to pick up some draws against Magnus Carlsen after the scandal. Even with all of these achievements, his wins are always still tainted by what happened 2 years ago. Hans Niemann's reputation among his fellow players and fans is still so low that many of them truly believe he has figured out a way to rig games in person, even till now. To make matters worse, the particular player even came online after he lost the game to Hans to express how it is hard to fight 98% accuracies. Other opponents he managed to defeat after the scandal just turned out to be sore losers and would start complaining, adding that competition had no anti-cheating measure in place. In conclusion, we should all not act as if Hans is not a talented player. The scandal made it seem like he was a fraud and even put a question mark against everything he has achieved in chess at such a young age. But as we have seen, he's a brilliant player that continues to, against all odds, allow his chess to speak for itself.
If you chose cheater, I have no words for you, but just one advice: move on. I find myself in this situation whereby even though I'm telling people to subscribe, I feel like they will not subscribe. But forgive me, please subscribe if you enjoyed any part of my content, whether it's from the beginning or the middle or the end. For the fact that you're still here till now, I believe that means you saw something valuable, whether it's the editing, whether it's the sound, something just kept you on the content till this point. So please comment, please like, and please subscribe. I actually want to get to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and the only way that would happen is if you subscribe and if you share my content. Thank you very much once again. Enjoy the rest of your day.